I knew from that moment I went into my first engineering lecture that I didn't belong.
Alexandra Knight. This is STEMazing.
I grew up in a small village in Kent, in the southeast of England, and we lived in a semi-detached house, and there was a little green out the front, which I used to love because I would go and play there all the time as a little girl. As a family, we did lots of things together. We're very privileged to have a boat. And so we used to go to the boat most weekends, and we didn't do a huge amount of sailing because we could only afford to buy a boat that needed a lot of work doing to it. So even as a young child, I was very much gainfully employed in sanding down the boat, painting the boat, cleaning the boat. So that was what we spent most of our weekends doing. But I used to love just being outdoors and near the water. I felt my childhood was a lovely adventure, actually, because we were always trying to do things that were a bit different and stretched us in some way. And I really appreciate the fact that my parents gave me those opportunities. But life was hard in quite a lot of ways for us as a family. When I was 4 years old, I was in a bad car accident. My mum was driving the car. We were coming back from a holiday in Cornwall, and there was a woman who was driving on the wrong side of the road coming towards us. My mum couldn't avoid her, and we ended up having a head-on collision. It was bad. I mean, my mum broke the steering wheel with her face. I was flung from the back seat to the front of the car, where I smashed my face up on the dashboard. I punctured my side on the handbrake. We were in a bad way. We were rescued from the car by paramedics. I don't know how long after the accident, because we were all unconscious, and they rescued us from the car. What they didn't realise, unfortunately, that it wasn't just me and my mum in the car. My sister was also in the car. She was only 2. During the accident, she'd been somehow rolled from her seat to under one of the front seats, and then the seat was crushed on top of her. She was hidden from view, but also the car seat fractured her skull. And so when they eventually did realise that she was in the car and rescued her from the car, they honestly didn't think she would make it. She was in such a bad way with such a bad head injury. And somehow it was a miracle, because no one thought it would happen, but she pulled through and survived. But it left her with lasting injuries, and she's suffered multiple disabilities for the rest of her life since then. So that was something that really affected our entire family life. We lived in a sort of cloud of stress, I'd say, after that. And everything we did was really trying to give my sister the opportunities to develop her physical and neuro capabilities, because all the specialists said she's never going to achieve anything. She'll struggle to finish school. She won't get any exams. She's not going to be able to live independently. She won't get a job. And so everything my parents did was to try and help her to grow into a person that could live some kind of quality of life. And that really dominated the whole of my childhood. I felt like the best way I could be helpful was to not be needy in any way, to not need attention, to not even really be seen, because my parents were dealing with enough and I could see how much stress they were under. So that sort of stuck with me and really shaped my identity as somebody who felt it was safest and most helpful to not be seen. And this kind of grew into this sort of feeling I had where I hated being in the limelight so much. I would avoid the limelight, avoid any attention, even to little things like kind of silly things. Like my mum said to me that when I was at primary school taking part in sports day, I would never let myself win anything. And she tells a story of the 100-meter race where I was way out in front, realised I was out in front and immediately pulled back so that some other child could win because I did not want to be the centre of attention. And that was really just the story of many examples in my life where I just tried to fade into the background, be a wallflower, observe, and not take up any of the spotlight. When I was at school, I was not brilliant at maths and science by any stretch, but I was okay at them and I knew how to work hard. I knew how to grind so I could get through the exams. And I remember one of my science teachers saying to me, Alex, engineering opens doors. And I thought, wow, okay, that sounds like a great career. My dad was an engineer, and that had actually put me off the idea of going into engineering because I didn't want to do the kind of engineering he did with heavy industry like pumps and turbines. But when I found out that there were other areas of engineering, like medical engineering, and I thought, wow, I could use this vocational career where I learned to actually be helpful. This is something that I could do. So I applied to study mechanical engineering at university with a specialism in medical engineering. And I suppose that probably was influenced by growing up with my sister who had many medical needs and medical technology that helped her. But I didn't realise that at the time. I didn't consciously think I'm doing this to help my sister and people like her. It was just something I felt drawn to do. Growing up, seeing my sister with her multiple disabilities and all the barriers that life put in front of her, I was acutely aware of the need for equality and inclusion in the world and the fact that it didn't exist. Walking into the lecture theatre on day one and seeing a sea of boys in front of me. And I don't even remember clocking one girl on that first day when I walked in. I was trying to pretend I was confident and come across as confident. And I went and sat down next to a group of guys who were looking through photographs. And they were really so passionate about these photos. I thought, my goodness, what are they looking at? And I said to them, what are the photos of? And they said, oh, you wouldn't be interested. It's an engine block. This is engineering. There's English lectures down the hall. I think you're in the wrong place. That was my introduction to engineering. And I kind of went, well, I am actually studying engineering. I am doing engineering. I am meant to be here. But at the same time thinking, oh, am I meant to be here? And then I remember thinking this is what it feels like to not be in the norm, in the majority. I had this sort of bizarre feeling of this is what it feels like to have some barriers that don't need to be there, but society has created them. So from that moment, I felt like I had to make a decision. I'm either going to give this my 100% or I'm going to leave. And there were actually many times when I felt like I just can't do this. I have to leave. But some kind of drive in me made me stick at it until I actually got that degree. I scraped into uni and then I graduated with a first class honours, top in my year group. And that was purely from grind and grit, which got me there. The only way that I managed to do that, when you break it down to the micro steps, was that I intentionally had to stretch my comfort zone every step of the way. I came up with this mantra of courage before confidence. And instead of waiting to feel confident and ready, just do it anyway and have the courage to do it. And I think that is something that has stuck with me then throughout the rest of my adulthood to date, where I know I can do hard things. And I know that if I have the courage, the confidence will follow with experience. And I think that whole time at university just ignited this passion in me and helped to direct that kind of unmet need I had as a child to feel seen, to feel like I could do something in my own right. And it was a weird sort of combination of almost everything in my life experience coming together to say, you deserve to be here, you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing, you just have to keep going because it won't always be easy. One of the tools that I found really helped me develop my confidence and my sense of ownership of my identity and where I was going in life with my career and my personal growth was doing STEM outreach. And what I mean by that is going into schools and talking to them about science, technology, engineering, maths, and what I was doing as a young engineer, growing my experience. And I did all of that obviously on a voluntary basis. And I felt like the stakes were really low. I could go into a school and it didn't matter if I messed it up, if I didn't do my talk right, if the activity I was running didn't go well. The kids always loved it anyway. And I felt like it was certainly not career limiting. Like there was no way I was going to lose my job by doing this kind of stuff. I was just helping people. But doing that and having again the mantra of courage before confidence, just go and do it. And then you will get better in the process. We're not aiming for perfection. And that is something that helped me develop my skills and confidence. So I've always been very passionate about the benefits for people of doing STEM outreach. And it benefits the person doing it as well as the young people that you're delivering it to. So I'd always done that in a voluntary capacity for years and years, like 15 years after uni. And then I decided I was actually going to set up my own STEMazing Kids Club in the town that we lived. At the time, I then had 2 young children of my own. I used to practice my own STEMazing kids activities that I had devised, and I created this business called STEMazing that I could actually use to run STEMazing Kids Clubs locally with schools, and families would pay a little bit just to cover the resources that we used. And so I just absolutely loved it, but I was only reaching, 10 children at a time. And this is something that really I felt like had the capacity to grow. I saw how much the children were enjoying it. I felt like I was getting so much out of it. But I needed a vehicle, a method, a way to grow the impact of it. And then COVID happened. And actually, that was a transformational moment for STEMazing. I decided to run a STEMazing Kids Club online. I had hundreds of kids now doing our STEMazing Kids activities, from Cornwall to the top of Scotland. And I thought, if I can do this, then other women in STEM can do this too. And I knew the importance of having visible, diverse role models for young people. And so I started asking some of my friends from different networks I was involved in, work, and saying do you want to run some of these STEMazing Kids activities? Because then we can reach many more kids. And there was a real reticence, people not really wanting to do it and coming up with excuses like, I don't have the time, or I don't know what to say to little kids. And so then I had the idea of training women in STEM to be more confident to deliver these kind of activities, and then matching them up with schools that wanted to take part. And really, the rest is history. That is how STEMazing started. It was incredible to see the women themselves benefiting from doing this program. And the stories I heard from them, wow, this has really boosted my confidence. I feel more confident to speak up in meetings at work now. I felt so fired up that I put myself forward for promotion and I got it. I was just starting to get all these stories back from women to say how much they had benefited from the program. And then I knew I was onto a winner, because if we can benefit children and teachers and families at the same time as benefiting the women who are leading these sessions, then it's an absolute no-brainer. I knew from that moment I went into my first engineering lecture that I didn't belong. And it had never occurred to me at the time, but that is because when you're the only person who looks like you in a room, you feel like you don't belong. And then when you start to look at the lecture slides and the books you're reading, and it's all about male engineers and what they've achieved and how great they are. And yes, they are. But again, it reinforces, well, there's no one that looks like me in these books, on these lecture slides, in these videos. And so I knew that what was missing in engineering and STEM more broadly, actually, is diverse, visible role models. And I never considered myself a role model for years, even after I started doing STEM outreach myself. And then it was when I was mentoring a university student years later in my career, and she said to me, "Wow, you are my role model." And I thought, wow, okay, that's really powerful. And I thought, well, what makes me a role model? There is nothing special. I'm an average person who knows how to work hard and has got a lot of passion that I am starting to learn how to direct. But I'm a normal person, and therefore anybody can be a role model. And then it sort of clicked to me, actually, we are all role models. We are all already role models, whether we actually recognize it or not, whether we appreciate it or not. We are all role modeling to each other, to those around us all the time. And everybody is influenced by that, by the people they hang around with, the people they work with, the people they see on social media, on TV, listen to on radio. We are all influencing each other. And if we recognize we're role models, we can then use that innate privilege and power and platform that comes from being a role model to positively influence, positively inform, and positively inspire those around us. And that's what I try and do with STEMazing, is prove to all of these women that they are already STEM role models and they can use this platform to drive real positive change. So when I think, who are my role models in life? My sister stands out as one of the biggest ones. She is honestly an inspiration to me every day. So if I look back and I think, wow, when we were in that accident and for many, many years afterwards, she was told she will never achieve anything. She won't live an independent life. And the work that she and my parents put into helping her, supporting her, giving her opportunities to grow and push herself physically and mentally meant that she has created opportunities for herself. There are days when my sister can't put her own socks on, she can't brush her own hair. But despite the challenges, every single day she gets up, she has created her own business, she runs her own business, she leads a successful, fulfilling, happy life with her husband and her 2 children in her own house. And it's incredible to see what she is doing with her life and how she's managed to do that. And I know I'm probably one of the only people in the world that knows she is in pain every day. She has a lot of challenges every single day, but she always has a smile on her face. She'll be the first person to tell a joke. She is the most beautiful, wonderful person. And she inspires me every day. She's my role model.
For more information about the guest featured in this episode, head to stemazing.co.uk/podcast. And to join the inspiration and inclusion revolution, just visit stemazing.co.uk. With thanks to Alexandra Knight and our production team at What Goes On Media. This is STEMazing.